as promised, Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou McDonald in studio, and you're welcome. And I'm glad to see that they've sorted you out with a cup of coffee and a Lanzarote cup. We may not have
a cup of tea and a Lanzarote cup, which is wonderful. I've obviously chosen the right day to be in Cork, judging by the weather forecast.
Sunshine.
Thanks for having me. Neil.
Well, you picked the best day. You're welcome, and good to see you. I was watching the Ardesh, and I have to say, you ticked every single box. Can I just go through the boxes that you ticked? It's like it's a feast or a famine in Cork, actually, for political leaders. You'd easily know that there was a by-election or something going on because you're tripping over each other. We had Leo at the weekend, Simon in studio last weekend, Micheál Martin, you're in town, and he wants to come on after you. So bring on by-elections. We get to see the party leaders. But with regards to the Ardesh, you spoke about 32 County Ireland, rents, housing, bed and breakfast, disabilities, rich people, banks, education, health, trolleys, climate change, living wage, the elderly, OAPs and pensions. You left nothing out. It's
disability.
I said that.
Did you? Okay.
It's a broad church, isn't it, of problems in this country. What did you mean when you said that the old ways weren't working? What were the old ways?
Well, I couched the speech not just with a by-election or elections in mind, but with the next decade in mind. And the point that I am making is that the last decade was about economic bust. It was about cuts. It was about austerity. It was, you remember the days, people leaving the island in their droves, and the government were short of just calling a taxi and driving them out, and young people leaving, all of that. And our perspective now is, with the changing into a new decade, we need a new set of opportunities. So the last 10 years were really, really hard. The next 10 years are our opportunity to deal with issues like housing, like health.
Not calling B&Bs home, kind of thing.
Exactly. Well, I mean, what kind of civilised society has a situation where you have 10,000 registered homeless people? There's actually a lot more, but 10,000 registered, and 4,000 of those are kids. I mean, 140 babies will be born into homelessness. You know, Santa is going to come to kids in hotels and B&Bs. And this isn't just a Dublin problem. At one stage, this problem was really focused in the city that I come from. But this is a problem now right across the country. It's a big, big problem in Cork. So we have to set standards for ourselves.
But if it could be fixed, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, the bigger parties would have fixed it.
No, they wouldn't. Go away out of that. They've no intention of fixing it. And here's the reason why. Their policies are about the market, they're about developers, they're about landlords. Look in the midst of the crisis how well landlords have done on the watch of Fine Gael. Look at the relationship that there was and still is between Fianna Fáil and private developers. And by the way, I absolutely accept that there has to be private houses built, so I'm not making that point. But I am saying very, very clearly, unless and until the state, that is the government, step up to the mark and say, right, councils need to build houses.
They are. There was all sorts of politicians on both sides, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael at the weekend.
With their hard hats. Well, let me address that. So that's great that there was a sod turning. Their rate of delivery is minuscule. And I am very sure the people in Cork North Central and right across this city can tell you their own personal stories of adult children moving back into the family home, sometimes with their own children. They can tell you stories of being years and years on a housing list. They can certainly tell you stories about skyrocketing rents. I think rent here in Cork now is averaging at what, about €1,400 a month.
Yeah,
that is not Neil, with the greatest
anywhere
of respect,
between say 1,100 and 1,800.
I mean, that's insane. That is not a record of success. And Leo and the lads rocking in for a photo opportunity in their hard hats doesn't take from that. But I'm not here to criticise them.
Yeah, but there's a lot of cranes in Cork now. There's an awful lot of building going on. Housing estates have been built, apartment blocks have been built.
A lot of
tech, a lot of farmers coming to Cork.
Student accommodation is being built.
That'll free up homes, though.
That's eventually, but the basic bread and butter things aren't happening. And I saw today the minister is out blaming the councils for that. That's actually wrong and totally unfair. The problem here is twofold. The central problem being that the government is incapable of understanding the scale of the problem or caring. They believe that the market can fix it, the market can't fix it. And then they wrap councils up in so much red tape. It's just horrific. It's like a game of ping pong between the Department of the Environment and Cork Council, for example. That red tape that messing needs to stop. We need to get serious and get real. And I really believe that we can sort this out. So for people who are listening and who are in despair, I know people despair. They say, look, I'm on this list so long, I'm never going to get housed, or there's no chance I'll ever put a mortgage together and have access to an affordable home. I want people to hear that it doesn't have to be this way. But for it to change, the old ways do have to change. And politically speaking, we have to move away from this idea that, you know, when it comes down to it, really the only options are either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. And I know that's the kind of has been the dynamic in Cork. That needs to stop. There are other parties, there are other people who bring better politics and are bringing solutions to the table.
Yeah.
And in our case, in the by-election, that'll be Thomas School.
You're up slightly, actually, in one of the last poll that I saw. Fine Gael 27, Fianna Fáil 25, Sinn Féin up to 17. Who would you do business with come a spring election?
So that's a very fair question as well. And there's a lot of people who vote for us, and a lot of members of our party would be extremely, extremely anxious at any notion of talking to Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael for all of the obvious reasons. And I think that's fair enough. However, I have set out a position whereby we will talk to and listen to everybody after the election to establish if there is the possibility for us to deliver housing, as I've described to you, for us to deliver on health and on education and on services for our citizens, and on a real change in our model of how we're going to develop and nurture our economy. Because you mentioned Big Pharma and the big players in Cork, which is fantastic and very, very welcome. But there has to be more to the economy of Cork than just the big players. You also need your SMEs, your small and medium-sized businesses, your sole traders, your micro businesses, and actually the fact that you have so many big players.
But you'd get in, then you want to put tax up, wouldn't you?
No, we would want fair tax, and we would want the big players to pay their fair share. I think that's only reasonable. So the tax. But
that could be 58% tax rate.
No.
Yeah.
No.
52 and 59 actually. 52 and 7 USC.
No. If you're talking about the big players, we're talking here about corporate tax rates.
Well,
and
you certainly would definitely put that up.
Here's one thing that needs to stop. Forget about raising the rates. The banks enjoy a tax holiday at the moment. I don't know if your listeners are aware of that. That certainly needs to stop. I mean, the very institutions that the taxpayers and the people of Cork
bailed out. They never paid it all back, sure they didn't.
No.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't be good. They are now very much in profit. Anybody who's paying their mortgage knows that you're paying through the nose for the privilege of having a roof over your head. So there is absolutely no excuse or no colour on having a situation where the banks enjoy this kind of tax.
So why don't we have a mortgage bank, a national mortgage bank?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. A national bank. We advanced that idea a long time ago, and that was poo-pooed as being some kind of red plot.
No, but young couples then maybe you could change the criteria for getting a mortgage, because an awful lot of them haven't got the deposit, but they would be very, very good clients to have with a bank loan.
Of course, and a lot of people who are, paying customers, like they're paying the rent and they're paying big rents.
They're paying more rent than mortgage.
Yes, they're paying rent month in, month out. Of course, they can't save a deposit, but they've demonstrated that they are really, really reliable, and solvent families. So yes, all of these items for change are on the agenda. But the bottom line is this: if it is the thing that the electorate constantly play a game of ping pong between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, things then don't change.
But we just see you in Stormont where you can't get on with anybody. There is actually no government being run in Northern Ireland at all. So you're like, how could we even trust if you can't do it north of the border?
We did it north of the border with the DUP, who are, you asked me about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. The DUP are tricky to do business with. We sustained a partnership government with them for 10 years, and then things came unstuck.
How long is it since you've sat down in the equivalent to a Dáil chamber?
Well, the Assembly hasn't sat in 3 years.
Crikey.
I know, it's insane.
But what do you mean it's
the
insane?
issues,
Like, on whose behalf is it insane?
it's insane on behalf of those who are keeping that situation alive.
That's not you.
No. February 12 months ago, we landed on what I believed was a fair accommodation. It wasn't perfect, but I thought we had made sufficient progress to move things forward. The DUP took a different view and they walked away. And the reality is, with the Assembly and the Executive, we can't put them back up on our own. You have to have a partner in unionism to make this work.
So you're not in Stormont. You refuse to take your seats in the British Parliament. Is that ever going to change?
Well, we're certainly, what's never going to change is...
An oath of allegiance to the Queen.
Yeah, I mean, would you take an oath of allegiance to the Queen?
But I'm not an elected representative in Northern Ireland whose voice isn't being heard in Westminster.
Well, the people of the North, from West Belfast and Mid-Ulster and other constituencies, elect MPs that are abstentions. They don't want their elected...
They know in advance.
Well, they don't want their elected representative swearing an oath of allegiance to the Crown. The border on the island is still contested. You see, the peace process has given us, thankfully, a democratic, orderly, peaceful manner in which to debate and to politically navigate
didn't we
the
get that
partition
from
of the
Fianna
country.
Fáil, Fine Gael and the SDLP, the Good Friday Agreement? The very people that you said in the Ardèche had forgotten about the North were the ones that brought peace to the North.
Did you see the reaction in the hall in Derry, in the North, to that remark? It was warmly received, rapturously received, because it's the truth. Of course, back in the day, Bertie Ahern, Tony Blair, all of the players concerned David Trimble, absolutely, Jerry Adams, Martin McGuinness, all deserve credit for landing the Good Friday Agreement. George Mitchell, you can't not mention George Mitchell. But the fact is that people in the North know full well, and you need to talk to them directly. They can give you testimony to this, feel that since 1921 they were forgotten, they were left behind. And then the peace process happened and we managed to put together an arrangement right across the island to manage the constitutional question. That includes a provision for a border poll.
Yeah, so let's say we have it, and it would be a great idea, right? And that we get a big happy clappy 32 county Ireland. Will we inherit then the £11 billion sterling bill that the UK has to pay out every year to subvent and subsidise the North?
Well, it's not going to be...
North of Ireland would break us.
No. Not at all.
Is that a true? That's a true figure, though, isn't it? £10.8 billion pounds.
It's disputed. In fact,
what do you dispute? A billion here or there, maybe?
No. It's almost impossible to get accurate and transparent figures.
Well, Northern Ireland doesn't. Well, would you accept that Northern Ireland doesn't? It doesn't wash its own face, like.
No, it doesn't. And how could it? It's the 6 counties cut off from their natural hinterland.
I know, but all I'm trying to work out. Listen, I get it, right? I'm as loyal as the next guy, but you want to take over the 6 counties, fix health in the Republic and education and disabilities and homes and everything, and you're taking on this nightmare as well.
This isn't about taking over the 6 counties. The border counties on our island are the most disadvantaged on the island, and that's not happenstance. That is because of partition. Partition is costing us. It's costing us opportunities, not just politically and socially, but economically too. I've called for the Taoiseach to convene a forum because we need to start talking now about a fully all-Ireland economy, how it works, how it operates. We need to talk about the health services north and south, because neither of them work, despite the fact that a lot of money is being spent. We need to talk about all of these issues and we need to plan for them. I'm not suggesting for a second some kind of crazy, reckless course of action that just is in a happy clappy way says, hooray, the 4th green field, let's get to it. Far from it. I am arguing, and we are arguing, for a very thoughtful and a very inclusive conversation that says Brexit has happened. The conversation on unity is happening now. We can't put that genie back in the bottle, even though some political leaders wish to try. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about Ireland post-Brexit. Let's talk about the border, which is now not just our problem. The British border on our island is now a European problem. Let's talk about our international partners who can assist us in planning in a new way for the island that delivers for everybody. Will that be challenging? Absolutely. But if anybody thinks that you can look the other way, whether you're in Cork or Dublin or Donegal, and wish this away, this can't be wished away. These issues need to be thought about, faced up to, discussed. And rather than seeing this as a threat, this is a huge opportunity. In fact, some economic modelling work has been done. I think a lot more needs to be done, but the work that has been done so far demonstrates that actually Irish unity can bring a huge economic dividend. So rather than seeing the cost, we need now to look at the opportunity, because as I said in my speech, there will be a referendum on unity. This isn't pie in the sky.
Both sides of the border.
There have to be referendums north and south.
But not in the UK.
It's not, no. It's not pie in the sky. So we have two choices, it seems to me. We can prepare or we can fail to prepare.
Would that not lead to paramilitary activity again then?
No, I think that we need to be very thoughtful around how we manage this process. And I think we need to do everything to ensure that things are civil and steady and stable. And actually, if you consider what we've been through for the last couple of years, because it's been difficult to manage a situation without an assembly and an executive. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous that we're left in this position. But if you actually look at how that has been managed in the round, I think it has reflected that actually Northern society is stable, and that there is absolutely no appetite for a return to any form of armed actions on either side, despite the activities of some loyalists.
Yeah, there's no, this Kevin Lunny attack, is that paramilitary linked, do you think?
That seems to be specific to to what happened around
the border.
The quid. No, but that's about that particular enterprise. It seems to me, I'm not privy to the details. I was actually up with Kevin.
Seemed to have the trappings of paramilitary, the things that they did to them.
Whatever, it had the trappings of absolute brutality and thuggery. We were up with Kevin just before the European elections, and the conversation we were having with them at that stage is Brexit and the border, because of course their business, they're crisscrossing that border night and day. So yes, that's very, very, very frightening up there. By the way, I mean, the lack of Garda resources up along the border, and not just in the border. I know it's a big issue here in Cork.
Because they've all gone to the border.
It's not because they've gone to the border. It's because Garda stations have been closed down or their hours have been cut back. This is a legacy of the cuts that I spoke about in the last decade. And the fact is that places like Cork don't have enough Garda.
But what are you going to do? Because if there wasn't so much thuggery and violence and young people who seem to be misbehaving an awful lot more now, what are you going to do about all of that? Like, there wouldn't be a need for huge amounts of Gardaí if people cop themselves on. Well,
I'm a great advocate of copping yourself on. I'm the mammy of teenage children. I know all about the cop yourself on pep talks. But the fact is, to keep our towns, our cities and our villages safe, you do have to have Gardaí on the beat. And it's not to create a kind of... But
teenagers feel they're untouchable, you see, because there's no actual...
I don't know. Is that fair of all teenagers? I know there's a section of them that behave really, really badly.
I'm only talking about the ones that behave badly, not the vast majority who don't.
The kids they're good kids.
Yeah, but you know that we had riots in the city here last week. It was
absolutely
we had a bus driver who was threatened with rape by 50 or 60 thugs.
Disgusting. But it proves my point.
They were all marched off the bus and told to go home by the guards.
Yeah, well, we need more than a rap on the knuckle for these brats. But you're making my point for me. I think, particularly perhaps for teenagers, when they know there are boundaries, and if they know that there are Gardaí, there are people out on the beat, they are far less likely to push their luck or to behave in this appalling way. And a city like Cork, it is just not. It's not acceptable. It's not viable to have 2 or 3 Gardaí, on duty on any given night. That's asking for trouble.
So you'd fix that as well, would you?
That has to be fixed. Are you suggesting we shouldn't fix it, Neil? You're not.
I'm suggesting that if it was fixable, it would have been done before now.
Well,
I'm suggesting that 100,000 people on trolleys in this calendar year is not something that political parties just say, sure, what the hell. They're trying.
No, but you have to ask yourself the question, why are they on trial? So let me just give you an example just to illustrate the point. So I have raised Cork University Hospital the status black that they had to call on a couple of occasions. Status black means that you're beyond overcrowding and you're into really unsafe conditions in your hospital. And I put it to the Taoiseach that we were in severe difficulties with this. He says the problem isn't that there aren't enough beds. I said to him, but look, there's people on trolleys, there's people on chairs, there's people who can't find chairs in the hospitals.
There's people who can't find a dignified place to die.
Exactly. So the issue is beds. The issue is beds. And despite their propaganda to the contrary, they have failed to look that reality in the eye. It's about beds. It's about staff.
But it's not about money.
It's about primary health care.
It's not about money, sure.
It's about the correct use of money. So, for example, if you were to look at the agency staff bill, is huge within the service. But they will do that rather than recruiting full-time personnel. They will do that instead of recruiting full-time personnel, paying them an equal wage, equal to their colleagues, and keeping them in the system. So the difficulty with the health scenario is there's a danger for people to say, well, you may be arriving at this conclusion, no one can sort it out. Well, you can actually, but you're only going to sort it out if you accept what the problem is, if you get the diagnosis right, and then if you actually prescribe the right medicine. And part of it, it's not its totality, but part of it certainly is more beds and more staff. And if you're not prepared to do that, you will continue to have problems in Cork University Hospital. I know you need new other hospitals here as well, and there's plans for that.
Well, they closed hospitals down here
exactly.
as well
so
as they did Garda stations.
It's repair
but nobody
work.
talks about wellness, though. I mean, the cost of cheap food is going down, and the cost of medicine in Ireland is going up.
Yeah.
Like it should be the other way around.
Yeah, and I think people's well-being in its totality, your physical health, your mental health. I thought we had started, and I think we have started, a fairly good all of society conversation on those things. But I think it waned a little bit. So I think we need to revive that again. One of the things that strikes me when I go around the country, and you won't go into a village, a town or a city without meeting family after family that will tell you stories about mental health crises for themselves or for their loved ones. And we actually have a really good blueprint for mental health services, one that all of the parties
does any of that include eat healthy and get a lot of exercise and fresh air?
Yeah, well, that's the basics of like healthy
rather
mind.
Rather than giving everybody a label.
Yeah, no. I'm not talking about labelling people. I'm talking about supporting people. Services, the services that are delivered, lots of the time, as you know, Neil, are community based. They grow up in the community. They're very much grassroots organisations, and the last thing they want to do is label anyone. But vision for change, this strategy that was adopted more than 10 years ago, is the way to go. But again, you can have it written down on paper, it can be a great plan, but you have to make it real, and that means you need to actually prioritise the issue and invest in it and help people to help themselves, because communities are ingenious in terms of coming up with the right response for people living in their own community. And very often it is the simple things, sports, the GAA, soccer, boxing, whatever it is, whatever your sport is. And it's also about networks of conversation that people know, younger people perhaps in particular, they have go-to people and they have leaders.
Actually, in rural areas, young people are leaving, and I see it in West Cork and in South Kerry. They're just legging it from the country towns, and it's actually an older demographic that are left who are feeling lonely and isolated. And then Danny Healy-Rae wants to give them a permit for 2 pints, and everybody says he's off his rocker, like. They can't get to the pub anymore. Yeah,
and I accept that that's a problem, but the answer isn't to encourage people to drink and drive. I mean, people have died on our roads. I don't think that's.
You think you'd be inclined to kill somebody after 2 pints, or is it that people would have more than 2 pints? Well,
I think if you drink it all and drive, you're playing with fire.
No, I'm just asking if you're stuck up the side of a mountain, is it you and the tractor?
I accept that. I accept that there's a huge difficulty for people living with rural isolation. But I don't believe that the answer to that is to say, go to the pub, have any amount of pints, get into your car and get back. I think the more constructive way to deal with that is to deal with rural transport and to deal with it creatively.
With regards to trying to get young candidates into politics now, you've seen the recent events with certain Lorraine Clifford Lee and others like that, whose social media platforms have been looked at, their Twitter and their Facebook, and things that they said in the past, sometimes 10 and 15 years ago, sometimes when they were quite young, being brought out now and trashed about. Would you think that will disincline young people to want to engage, whether become members of Sinn Féin or Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, because of what happened in their youth?
Well, I think particularly younger people need to be aware that anything that you put up on your social media platform, A, is there for all the world to see. It's not a private chat with your friends. And B, it is there permanently. It's indelible. So yeah, you have to be thoughtful around what you post to protect yourself. But you ask
young candidates or people who want to go forward for local elections or whatever, listen, is there anything in the past there that they might come and,
Yeah,
disclose?
I mean, you have to say it to people because you have a duty of care to the person. You have to say, be aware. Be aware when you're posting things. Be aware if you have posted things. If you step into up to be a public representative, well, then you are going to be asked. You're going to be scrutinised. Some of it will be in good faith and will be fair enough. Other parts of it might be a little bit aggressive or a little bit malicious mixing.
The media just don't seem to want to let go one or two of the women involved here. It's a bit like Maria Bailey. They won't let go of her either.
Well, I suppose in those cases, the Lorraine Clifford Lee and Maria Bailey, those postings or those things that happened were the people were very much mature adults when the things were said or done, and controversies erupted around them. I'm very conscious, by the way, you see people in the real world are much more concerned about their lives and their families and how they're getting along than necessarily these storms and Swinggate or all of that that are kind of very political stories. But at the same time, I'm also conscious that when you're in the public eye, you will be asked just about anything and everything, and you do have to be accountable for using like words were used by one of these women that I just think were crazy, and I don't know.
Loads of people use those words.
Yeah, well, I don't think that the word, am I allowed to use one of the words? The word slut. I don't think there's a context where that's okay. I just don't.
Referring to...
no, I know the place in question, and in fact, it's a place
reality TV show.
No, she was referring to... the Rights venue. It's actually a place where they have a
Somebody
club. But they have the kids after the junior cert go there and everything. So I think that was very unwise of her. I think that's bad stuff to be saying and using. But you're right. Be aware in this life, whether you're a public representative or not. Neil, if you're going for a job, your prospective employer is likely to go and look at your social media platforms.
I thought GDPR would have knocked the head on that, no?
Well, they're public platforms. I got you. It's a bit like standing behind the banner in New York. Oh, God. Okay, we talked about that before.
Britza, I mean... Was that your Achilles heel moment?
It did not say that. That banner, by the way.
It's like Andrew with his hand around the young girl.
No, excuse me. There's no comparison. There's absolutely no comparison.
I'm talking about the photograph. Do you regret that?
Well, I certainly regretted the whole hullabaloo that it kicked off.
So why did you apologise? Why didn't you say it's how I feel? No,
but I did say that. I said this is a political statement. It's not just a political statement, Neil. It's the theme of the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Simon Coveney told you to go away and grow up. How did you feel?
I know. Well, sure. Can I say to him, Simon, go away and grow up yourself? I think it would be better for Simon and those in government to knuckle down on the hard issues that are going to make a difference in people's lives.
Okay, and what are you doing this afternoon? Are you out with Tommy Gould?
I am out. I'm out with Thomas Gould, who is coming to your doorstep very soon. I hope people will come out and vote in this by-election. It's an important election. Thomas is a great champion for the North Side.
I'll give you that.
So he's told me he's not going to tolerate any longer the North Side being left behind. Thomas is going to go and change that. So we're meeting with some businesses here in Cork. and I will be in Blackpool in the shopping centre for a walk around, I think around 2:00, so
Okay.
keep an eye out.
Pressing the flesh and kissing babies.
Absolutely.
All right, good luck with that and good to see you. Thanks for coming in.